Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome to my bunny sugar cookie tutorial. Let's get piping.
To make the royal icing, you need icing sugar and meringue powder and water. For every 1 cup of icing sugar, you want to use 1 tablespoon of meringue powder. And the amount of water you're going to use is dependent upon how thick you want your icing. For this outline that I'm doing around my bunny, I've done quite a thick icing. I want to avoid flooding, and when you're just starting out making cookies, this is probably the best consistency to go with so that you do not risk your cookies overflowing. Here I am going to paint the bunny ears on. Because I want those ears to sit a little bit more inlay, I'm just painting on some very watered down icing. This tone is a little bit pinky beige, and for some reason that brown color I showed you makes this color. Here I am piping the ear detailing on the outside. Now, if you're just starting to make cookies, I would actually not do this step until that painted royal icing is fully dry. Here I am flooding the cookie, and I'm using my new cookie scribe that my husband got me for my birthday. And I'm just moving that icing around. If you wanted a little bit more in control around the ears, instead of spooning on the icing, you could put this into a piping bag so that you can pipe out the flooding icing. This is probably the trickiest part when making your cookies, is figuring out what consistency works for you. Some people like a really loose icing and they're able to work pretty fast. Some people like it a little bit thicker. You just have to do trial and error, and that's why I'm not really doing a video on the flooding, because it just never worked for me to go off of what other people have done. I just need to do it over and over and over again to get it right. Here I'm just popping all the little air bubbles so we get a perfectly flat surface. I filled a piping bag with that warm brown color that we had used earlier for that pinky beige tone for the ears. I just added a whole lot more of the food coloring. And I am using one of my wonderful tipless bags again from the Cake Mama, and I cut a very small hole so I could get really nice fine lines. Do not fret if you did not make perfect brown lines. They're mostly going to get covered up by these lovely leaves and florals that we're going to be adding. When you're making the leaves, you use a leaf tip of any sort and you squeeze and release. As you're releasing off, you stop squeezing. One thing I forgot to mention is that before you add any of the brown lines and the beautiful leaves, you need to make sure that your bunny is fully dry underneath to avoid any of the details sinking into one another. So while you're waiting for things to dry, you can work on your flower details. Here I am making a little, I don't know what you would call this, it's like a little flower bud. And I started with a little bit of icing in the center, and then using that center, I'm creating little rainbow arcs all around. I'm twisting the flower nail as I go, as well as guiding my hand in the opposite direction. And there you go, easy peasy. This little flower was sitting overnight, and the thicker that you make your icing when you're piping these flowers, the faster they'll dry, and also the more detailing that you're going to get. Here I'm just using a tiny star tip to create these little rosettes. This is super easy to do. It's kind of like piping a cupcake, but instead of getting a little peak at the top, you're just stopping before you get that peak. You can choose to layer these on directly, or I also made some in advance. These ones are really hard now, and they're really easy to maneuver onto your cookie. Just make sure your cookie is a bit wet still. I wanted to make these bunnies a little bit vintage looking, so I'm adding what I think looks like a lace detail. And I am using the exact same piping bag that we used at the beginning of the tutorial for the outline of the bunny. I am all about not wasting any bags, but more importantly, not wasting any time. When you're doing any sort of piping, you're actually not holding the bag super close to the cookie. My cookie is probably about a 1/4 inch away from the piping bag, and I'm dropping down the lines. And this is the hardest technique to really master. But once you master doing straight lines and dots and then curved lines, you're gonna be able to pipe any cookie that you want. I included this next part just because I love watching satisfying cookie decorating videos. Enjoy! I'm using 100% edible petal dust to highlight the little cheek area of our bunny. And as you can see, I'm just using a very tiny amount at a time and really finessing it into the cheeks. This is because the petal dust is so pigmented that if we have a lot of fallout, it's gonna go all over the place where I don't want it to. Next up is creating our bunny's cute face. I am taking an edible pen and drawing in the eyes and the rest of the details. Here I am piping on her little nose. And what I love about using the tipless bags for icing sugar cookies is that I can kind of use the end to finesse that nose, make it nice and flat, whereas if you use a tip, it's gonna get clogged. So this is where the benefit of tipless bags come in. Here's another face, a little bit girlier. You can also do this with just a pattern, no face at all. Making these dots is really easy. All you need to do is you hold down your piping bag, and when you're ready to release the dot, you let go and stop piping.
If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the notification bell so you can see when I upload a new video. Right now during this time, I'm uploading daily at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. See you for the next video.